when I tried quitting video games for the first time, being a perfectionist kind of hindered my effort to free myself from that addiction, because what a perfectionist is it's somebody who takes pride in doing everything perfectly, especially if they do it perfectly the first time. So basically, it's this impossible standard that you hold yourself to, and whenever you don't fulfill that standard, you get angry at yourself, you get disappointed at yourself, you keep on trying and trying and trying at the same thing until you get it absolutely right. So there's definite benefits to being a perfectionist. Maybe you relate to this, right? Like maybe you're a perfectionist with your grades, or with your athletic career, or with whatever else you're doing. There's definite upsides to being a perfectionist, because then you have this kind of worth ethic that maybe comes from pride, but it basically helps you build up to a point where you've done everything completely perfectly, and then because you've done everything perfectly, you're more successful, right? So that's the benefit. But the downside to being a perfectionist is that it can perpetuate bad habits, potentially self-destructive habits that are hurting yourself and others, that might just dig you further into a whole like gaming addiction could be, right? Because being a lifelong perfectionist, if I can speak personally, being a lifelong perfectionist, I always felt this insane need, obviously, to do everything right, to complete everything 100%, to be the best at everything that I set out on doing, right? Whether that was a video game or school or any task that was put in front of me, I always had the standard that I had to not only do my absolute best, but more so to be the absolute best relative to everyone else, right? And that was a very, very unhealthy mindset when I was going into video games, because basically what happened was my gaming habit and my addiction to gaming, they started to fuel each other. So back in, I'd say, spring of 2020, when I actually started gaming, I already had this sense of perfectionism about me for my schooling and whatnot, and for the sports I was participating in. So when I started gaming, that carried over, and I started wanting to collect games that I wanted to play. And then once I started doing that, I wanted to complete these games 100% before moving on to the next one. So it hasn't even been like 3 months since I even got like a video game console, but here I am with like 5 different games, and I want to complete all of them 100%. And then after I'm done that, I want to buy new games for a new console and all this different stuff. And I've basically like committed myself into like this almost bottomless pit of just like having to play all these games, whether I like them or not, by the way, because it's just in my nature, I think, or it was and still is, to want to complete everything that I set out to do, right? So you can see this with my gaming example. So I have these 5 different games that I want to complete 100%, and then I'm going to buy these new games that are also going to be super fun, and then I'm going to complete those 100%. And I'm basically trying to 1% to 100% everything, right? To complete everything. And that was basically like my only goal, my only project for my life at this stage, where I'm probably like 12, 13, 14, even into my 15th year. I was basically just, this was my project. This was what I was doing with myself. I was buying these new games, and I was buying these new consoles, and I was basically completing all these games 100%. And based off of how high my motivation was to play these games or not, I would always just still play them. And because of that, it just became less and less fun to actually play video games, because I was trying to complete everything 100%. So I would buy the newer consoles, right? The Switch. And I would buy games for that. And then I would and I would try to 100% complete those as well, which obviously they're bigger games, so they take longer to complete. So I'm basically wrapped up in like 5 different games across like 6 different console generations. And yeah, like I said, I basically committed myself into this hole. So now my perfectionism makes me basically obligated to myself to play these games. And then when I'm playing these games, my perfectionism influences me to complete every single side quest, to collect every single collectible item, to do every single side quest, all this different stuff. That's basically like these just niche little things that are required to beat the game 100%. That's what I'm spending my time doing, and I'm literally just like obligating myself inside of my head to do them. So these games are really just no longer fun. They're just this project that I'm working on. And how I react and how I reacted to that was, I guess, my mental health just got even worse, because if you're a perfectionist and you don't know how to handle your perfectionism, right, your mental health is definitely going to suffer because of it, right? Because your perfectionist standards are always going to be like way beyond your current ability to perform, right? These standards that you hold for yourself as a perfectionist are going to be way higher than you are actually capable of achieving in reality. They're going to be way higher than anyone is capable of achieving in reality, except maybe like an absolute professional. But because of that, my mental health suffered even more when I was playing video games and whatever. And whenever I would die or lose a game or fall short of some kind of a standard within this game, whatever game I was playing, then I would get really pissed off, and I would take out that anger on people at school or on my parents or on my siblings. It was almost like it was almost kind of pathetic, like being me in that situation. It's like I'm throwing some kind of temper tantrum with whoever's there, and unlucky enough to listen to me. In those situations, it was like I was some little toddler throwing a temper tantrum just to let out my anger, just because I had no other healthy bank basically to just like put my anger into, right? And once I started taking up the gym and I started exercising and I started bulking up, that kind of took the edge off. That kind of served as an outlet for my anger. But at this point, I really didn't have anything, so I just kind of took that out on myself and others, right? I wouldn't say I harmed myself physically, but I definitely like my physical health definitely took a toll when I was gaming, because I would stay up late. I would eat unhealthy food when I was gaming. I would basically be exposed to blue light for like 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And yeah, so my body definitely took a toll for that. And I don't know, maybe it's aged me a couple years. But this all just stems from my sense of perfectionism, that I have to stay up until 12 midnight every single free day that I have, so that I can grind out these different games that I'm playing. And it sounds fun to me, like that idea of like being sleep deprived and working on something like super late, and like getting all these hours in and grinding and working like a mule on your projects. That sounds fun to me. It sounds romantic. It sounds idealistic. But that's just it. It sounds idealistic, but it's just not realistic. It's bad for my health. It's bad for my physical health and my mental health. It's bad for my relationships. It's just bad for everyone. Like when I try and actually do that, everyone loses. So those are kind of some of the fallacies that I believed and experienced and lived out because of my perfectionism when it came to gaming. So in spring of, I think it was 2023, I had basically been, probably since the beginning of the year, or ever since late 2022, I had been looking into this whole idea of distancing myself from video games, limiting my screen time, trying to improve my mental health, improve my relationships, improve my physical health, trying to become more athletic. And I realized that as I looked into this stuff and looked into online influencers who were talking about improving this and that aspect of their life, that I was going to have to distance myself from video games if I wanted to improve these different parts of my life. And then that led me to different sources that were just telling me that video games are bad for you now, right? Like they're very harmful for your mental health, and basically they're just a giant waste of time if you actually think about it. And deep down, I knew that. I probably knew that fact for like ever since I started playing video games. That was obvious to me on some subconscious level, but I never actually admitted to myself when I was playing video games that I was wasting my time, that I was throwing my life away, that whatever I completed on that screen meant virtually nothing once I powered off the console and turned off the TV, right? Like nobody cares if I'm good at X and Y game in real life, unless I want to become a professional gamer, but that's a whole different can of worms. So also, if you're interested in getting extra help with quitting your video game addiction, I now have a course up. You can click the link in the description and buy the course now for the cheapest price it's ever going to be. And if you want to quit your video game addiction for good, I'm confident that this course can help you. I spent probably weeks of my time and effort trying to make the best course I can to help guys just like me who are in the same situation that I was help quit their gaming addiction. And if you can relate to this video, then I'm sure that that course can help you. So go ahead and check it out. When I was playing games, and I consciously knew now that I was wasting my time, throwing my life away, and when I knew that video games were bad for my mental health, and that they were hurting my eyes, and that they were basically rotting my brain, then my mental health became like even worse, right? Because now that I'm consciously hurting myself, now that I'm basically admitting to myself that I don't have enough self-respect to not do something that is bad for me, then my mental health basically just goes down the toilet from then on, right? And then my perfectionism pops in again and says, well, why don't you quit video games? Why don't you go cold turkey? And then that's exactly what I did. I tried to quit video games by going just like cold turkey from them, right? Cold turkey is basically just like where you don't play them at all, and you basically just go from being a video game addict to the next day you just use willpower, don't play video games at all. And that lasted for not even a day, because I would power off the game console late at night the first day, right? I would tell myself, okay, I'm never going to play these again. I'm just going to use my willpower. I'm not going to play again. I'm just going to keep my console right there in front of the TV in my room, and hopefully I just won't play it. And then I'm coming back on the bus. I'm from school, right? And I'm thinking about what I'm going to do when I get home. And obviously, what I'm used to doing whenever I get home, according to my routine, is I play video games for hours on end. But then I tell myself, no, I can't do that. I'm different now. I'm trying to change. But then the other side of my brain tells me, well, what if we just play like a little bit of video games today and then we'll quit forever? And then the perfectionist side of my brain says, no, we can't do that. We're trying to quit forever, right? And it's just like this back and forth thing where it's between these two different forces in my head, both of which aren't really in my favor, because this perfectionist side is trying to hold me to an unrealistic standard, and obviously this side is trying to get me to quit, but is trying to get me to play video games again, which obviously isn't good for me, so why would I do it, right? Anyways, I get home and I start playing video games again, because obviously. And at this point, I'm starting to get kind of desperate. I'm starting to see the futility in trying to go cold turkey from video games, trying to hold myself to this perfectionist standard. So I watch more videos about trying to quit video games. I look at more articles. I look at what other people have done to try quitting video games. And what I become more and more conscious of is that I have to get rid of my perfectionism, which I was totally aware of at this point. And not only was I aware of it, but I kind of pride myself in it, because I thought that the only reason I had gotten anywhere in my life at this point, the only reason I've gotten good grades, the only reason I'm a unique person, the only reason I may be someone worth keeping around, is because I'm a perfectionist. It's because I hold myself to such a brutally high standard that no one else is basically, I thought it was brave enough to hold themselves to, right? I thought that basically I was noble or valuable in some way because I prided myself in basically beating myself up mentally whenever I failed, basically being my own worst abuser, being my own like abusive parent whenever I would mess up on stuff. And I pride myself on that. So basically when you think about this, is I'm basically in a toxic relationship with myself. And this toxic relationship is basically rooted in video games and late night studying and lack of sleep and a terrible diet and a lack of exercise and a lack of mental health, and basically telling myself that I either hate myself or that I love myself every single day, just like bouncing between these two extremes, being super volatile. And as I start to become conscious of this, I now realize that I basically have to ditch perfectionism. I have to throw it out of the window in order to actually quit video games for good. Because this is a tip that you can use as well, but as you start to quit any addiction, in this case video games, then you're going to relapse it. You're going to relapse on it at some point. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be next week, it might not be next month or even next year, but at some point you're going to relapse on it. At some point you're going to have these cravings for the thing, right? I realized that at some point I was going to have this insane urge to play video games again. At some point, maybe on a Saturday afternoon, I would be super bored. I'd just be sitting around the house and I'd be wanting to play video games again because I had nothing better to do. So I acknowledged that and I anticipated it, and I basically rearranged my schedule so that I would go on like a super long walk every single Saturday, right? Because that was kind of like the dead time in my schedule. Maybe I had like a couple things to do every Saturday, but for the rest of my day I was basically free. And I live in like a small town. I didn't have a driver's license yet or anything, so I couldn't really go anywhere. But I promised myself that I would just go for like a 3-hour walk every single Saturday during like the prime time where I felt like playing video games. And I did that successfully, and for probably like the first Saturday in years, I actually didn't game like at all. And my perfectionism was obviously quiet at that point because I wasn't playing video games at all. But I did get cravings for it as the next week went on, right? As life progressed, I started wanting to play this and that game again. I started wanting to make more progress in gaming once again. And then that kind of subsided once I started going into the gym and weightlifting and using that as a substitute for advancing and getting accomplishments and achievements and rewards in video games. I started instead increasing my bench weight, my squat weight, my deadlift weight, my deadlift weight, stuff like that. Advancing the weight that I was using on these different exercises instead of grinding away at video games, right? Because building muscle and bodybuilding and these practices that you have to do for hypertrophy, for building your muscles, right? This is all very, very similar to video games, and perfectionism also plays like a very, very critical role in it as well. Because let's say if I'm doing a set of like bent over rows, right, and I go to failure, I'm doing like I do like say 8 reps, and then on the 9th rep, I feel like I can't get it back to my chest anymore. Then I do like partial reps, right, or I start like swinging it, or I start just like holding it static in place, just to like drain the last bit of energy out of my back muscles, right? That's called like forced negatives and forced reps, and they're very painful and they're not easy and they're very, very hard to do. And many people don't do them because they're painful and because they suck. But you know what? I'm a perfectionist, so I do that stuff, and therefore I build more muscle and I'm more athletic, and I pride myself on that. So now my perfectionism basically creates a positive feedback loop with my activities within the gym, so that I build more muscle, I can practice being a perfectionist, and everyone wins because I'm gaining real life experience and real life success, not only with the gym, but with these YouTube videos, my relationships, my mental health, journaling, all that stuff. Having perfectionism in these habits means getting very, very consistent with them. And consistency is another thing I've always struggled with, right? It's all about like what I want in the moment and what I want to complete at this time, right? It used to be, I don't want to go to bed at this scheduled time that I told myself that I would go to bed to every single day of the week, because I want to keep playing this video game and I'm not tired. And I want to get to this level and whatnot, blah, 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 blah. But now my perfectionism leads me to going to bed at the same time every day. It leads to me eating a perpetually like perfect. It leads to me, like a perfectly clean diet is what I'm now eating because I'm a perfectionist, right? And yeah, it's just this positive feedback loop of perfectionism and good habits, and then more perfectionism and then more good habits, right? And yeah, it's this new standard that I hold myself to, where I'm basically harnessing my perfectionism to help me advance in these good tasks, these good habits that are actually good for me and that aren't self-destructive. So I've learned to be a perfectionist in the self-care habits that really matter, as well as habits that lead to real life success. So that's what I've learned, and I hope this video helped you. Yeah, so leave any comments, questions in the comments if you have them. Any feedback about how I make these videos, how I style them, that kind of stuff, please don't hesitate to leave a comment about them. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you later.